Hello there, this is Glenn Barry with Dr. DMV LLC, and I'm back with another video. In this video, I'm going to partially document brewing two batches of beer in parallel. One's an all-grain batch and one's an extract batch. And here is the recipe book for the all-grain batch. It's an American Saison. It's a clone of a Boulevard Brewing Tank 7 Saison. And then here is the extract batch. It's a Brewer's Best Belgian Saison recipe. Here's the ingredients for the Saison from the extract batch. It's got specialty grains and Belgian candy syrup and dry malt extract and hops. And then here is my 3-vessel all-grain brewing system. It's got a hot liquor tank on the right, a mash tun in the center, and a boil kettle on the left. All right, it's Sunday, January 31st. We're trying to brew two batches sort of at the same time. So we're doing a Saison with all grain here. We're just heating up the strike water at the moment. We're getting pretty close to the temperature we want to start at. And then on this old little system here, we're going to try to do an extract batch of Saison. So that's what's going on. Everything's all ready to go on the brewing cart. And then over here, we've got the ingredients for both batches. So here's the all grain batch. And then here is the extract batch. Luckily, it's not windy out today, and it's going to be sunny and in the low 50s. So this is a pretty good day to brew at the end of January 2021. So while I'm waiting here, on the right, this is called the hot liquor tank, and this is what you use to heat your strike water when you're doing all grain brewing. And then in the middle, we've got a mash tun. It's an SS Brewtech Infusion mash tun. It's insulated and has a small heating pad underneath it, and that's what this controller talks to. And then we have the boil kettle right here. And these hoses are going down to a pump, and that recirculates the wort at the end of the boil. And then I've got a pump here, so I can go from the strike water to the mash tun, and we can use that for sparging also. And this little cart is something I built a few years ago, just out of wood. And then my fermenter is right there. It's a 14-gallon fermenter, which is actually a little bit too big to make 5-gallon batches with, but it's got heating and cooling when it's hooked up to the glycol chiller. And the glycol chiller is back here. This is a first-generation SS Brewtech glycol chiller. They don't make anymore, but this lets you run 4 fermenters in parallel, and they all have their own temperature control. In fact, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to turn this thing on to get the glycol reservoir cooled down. And then here's my secondary fermenter that I use for when I'm doing two batches at the same time. And it has a cooling control that I can use, but that's not my problem here in the winter. So I'm actually going to take it into the house to ferment. And then the other one's going to ferment out here in the garage. And the heating and cooling that it has on the main fermenter will just let me set whatever temperature I want. All right, now we're transferring strike water from the hot liquor tank to the mash tun. And I'm going to get about 5 gallons in there and then see what my temperature is to start off my mash. So you can see the temperature starting to go up on that controller, and we'll see what happens. There's different ways of transferring the water from the hot liquor tank to the mash tun. I'm just using my sparge arm right now, but I could just run it from here over to here. And I've done that a few times also. Doing it this way, I lose a little bit more heat, but it's really easy to use this pitcher to transfer water back and forth from the hot liquor tank to the mash tun so you get the temperature you want. And the temperature is really important depending on what kind of beer you're making and how much alcohol you're trying to get out of it. Generally speaking, lower mash temperatures give you more alcohol, and higher mash temperatures give you better mouthfeel. So there's no one temperature that you use for all beer styles, and sometimes you'll do what's called a step mash. That's what I'm going to try to do today. My equipment's not really very well suited for that, to be honest. This insulation in here and the small heating pad is meant to keep the temperature from falling over time, but it can't really raise it more than a couple of degrees. So to do a step mash, I actually have to take hot water out of this liquor tank and just put it in here to try to raise it up, the temperature. And if I had a more sophisticated system with a recirculating mash, I could set it to a more precise temperature, but I don't have that yet. All right, so we've mashed in on the all grain batch. My temperature's a little bit lower than I wanted, but we'll see if we can get it up. It should be 145, but that's what it looks like in the mash tun. The heating element inside this is cranked up, so that'll get it up a little bit, and I'm going to add some more hot water to it. It's supposed to mash at 145 degrees for 50 minutes, so I've got quite a bit of time to try to get it up. And being on the low side is just going to boost the alcohol content some. And then I've got hot liquor tank water going along here. And then over here in my all grain batch, or not in my extract batch, I should say, we're just steeping some specialty grains. Some extract batches do that. So that's what we're doing, and we're doing that for 45 minutes. So that's what's happening as of now. All right, time for another update on the brew day. We're still mashing at the first mash temperature. I've managed to get it up to 142.3, so only about 2.5 degrees below where I want it to be. So here's what it looks like. It smells very good. My puppy Chorizo is very upset that he's by himself inside. He's not by himself, he's got his sister. So he's just a spoiled little dachshund. And then on our extract batch, we're still doing the steeping. That's almost done. And that's where you take specialty grains that have been crushed as if you were doing all grain and put them in a grain bag like that. And you soak it in water that's the same temperature as it would be in a mash. So that's giving it some flavor and some mouthfeel as if it was an all grain batch of beer. So that's what it looks like right now. It's a little chilly out here in the garage. 52 degrees, so it's not terrible, but when you're out here for several hours, it starts to get a little bit old. Could be a lot worse though in January. I purposely brewed today. And here's all the ingredients for Gareth's Grin, which is the main thing that I'm brewing today. Okay, we've managed to raise the temperature up to 146.3. We're still low, but we're making it. We're done steeping on the extract batch. So I've got the burner on, trying to get this up to boil temperature. We're actually up to 146.8 now, so we're getting closer to where we want to be. And this is a long mash. It's 95 minutes mash on this. And here's what it looks like as of now. It smells very good, which I always say that, but it's like baking bread. It's what it smells like, to be honest. Okay, it's time for another update. We've got the mash temperature up to 150.4. That's still lower than I would like, but I keep adding hot water to the mash, and I can't add too much or it'll get too diluted. So anyways, the little heating pad is doing its best to try to get it up. And then over on the extract batch, we're during the boil. We're about 10 minutes into the boil. We already added 3 pounds of dry malt extract and the first 1 ounce of Northern Brewer hops. So that's what's happening here. This is going to be a 60-minute boil, fairly simple. And we have to add some more dry malt extract and some Belgian candy sugar, later and 1 more ounce of Northern Brewer hops. So that's what's going on with that batch. All right, we've got about 7 minutes left in the mash on the all grain batch that we're doing today. We're still below where we want to be on the mash temperature, but there's not much I can do about that. And then going over here, we've got a yeast starter that I started yesterday. So it's on my stir plate. I used proper starter, so I sort of cheated on the yeast starter. It's easier than heating up DME and boiling it and making a mess. And we're at 149.1. We were a little bit higher earlier. I really don't want to add any more water to this at this point. So anyways, that's what's happening there. And then on the extract batch, we're still boiling away. We've got about 30 minutes left to go on this. At 30 minutes, in a few minutes, I'm going to put in the second batch of hops. So that's where we stand as of now. Unfortunately, I had some operator error when it came to capturing some of the later clips in this process. I was actually concentrating more on making the beer rather than filming it, but I won't make that mistake again. So as it turned out, both batches came out fine and they're currently fermenting. The all grain batch came in a little bit higher on my original gravity than I expected, but that was sort of expected because I was low on my mash temperature all the way through. So depending on whether or not people are interested in this, I can do more videos like this that have more detail about what is actually happening as I make a single batch of beer. I think some people might be interested in learning how you actually make beer and why you make certain decisions instead of others. So I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back in future videos. Thanks a lot.